My own mother handed me a suitcase and told me never to come back. 10 years later, she was standing on my doorstep, her own suitcase in hand, asking for a place to hide. I was 19 when my life fractured. My family, the Martins, were pillars of our small, mist-covered town in the Pacific Northwest. My father, Robert, was a respected, if somewhat stern, history professor. My mother, Evelyn, was the elegant, organized heart of our home, a master gardener whose roses were the envy of the street. And then there was my older sister, Grace. Grace was the melody to my harmony, the one who made everything make sense. We were twins, though not identical. She had our father's sharp green eyes and our mother's calm smile. I had our father's stubborn chin and a restless energy that never quite fit in our orderly world. Grace was the golden child, but not in the way that breeds resentment. Her light was so warm it illuminated me too. She was effortlessly kind, brilliantly academic, and genuinely good. Where I was impulsive and outspoken, she was measured and diplomatic. Our parents adored her, and I did too. Their pride in her felt like a shared sun we all basked in. My role was a spirited one, the one who challenged my father at the dinner table, who chose art over academia, who brought home stray animals. It was a role I was comfortable in, because Grace's love was my constant. She was my anchor. The crack in our world began subtly. Grace, in her first year at a prestigious university a few hours away, started to change. Her weekly calls home grew shorter, her laughter strained. She came home for Thanksgiving with shadows under her eyes she couldn't conceal with makeup, jumping at the sound of the slamming door. When I asked her, privately in our old bedroom, if she was okay, she gripped my hand and said, "It's just harder than I thought. The pressure." She made me promise not to worry our parents. I should have pushed harder. I should have screamed. The call came on a Tuesday night in January. The rain was lashing against my bedroom window. It was the campus police. Grace had been found in the library, unconscious from an apparent overdose of prescription medication. She was alive, but it was touch and go. The 4-hour drive to the hospital was a silent blur of windshield wipers and my mother's choked sobs. The days that followed in the sterile hospital corridor were a nightmare. Grace survived, but she was broken, a shell. She wouldn't speak, wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. The doctors used words like severe depressive episode and trauma. They asked if there was anything that might have triggered it. My parents were paralyzed with a grief so profound it turned to ice. They couldn't process that their perfect daughter was in such pain. Then a nurse pulled me aside. She had been helping Grace change and saw the bruises on her ribs and back. Old, yellowing ones. When she gently asked Grace about them, Grace had flinched and curled into a ball. The word the nurse whispered to me, her face etched with pity, was assault. My blood ran cold. I stormed my parents, who were huddled with the doctor. Someone hurt her, I said, my voice trembling with rage and fear. This wasn't just stress. Someone hurt Grace. My father's face, already gray with fatigue, hardened. Don't be dramatic, Anna. This is a medical issue. We don't need wild accusations. It's not an accusation. The nurse saw bruises. Bruises from what? My mother interjected, her voice thin as paper. She fell down the dorm stairs last month. She told me she's clumsy when she's tired. She's not clumsy. I shouted, the frustration boiling over. Can't you see? She's hiding something. We need to find out who did this to her. That's when my father snapped. He turned on me, his eyes blazing with a pain he couldn't control. Enough! Your sister is fighting for her life, and you're in here causing a scene, inventing monsters. You always have to be the center of attention, don't you? Even now. I recoiled as if slapped. I'm trying to help her. "You're not helping," he roared. The corridor went quiet. Your constant chaos, your rebellion, it weighed on her. She was always cleaning up your messes, worrying about you. Maybe if you'd been a better sister, a more stable influence, she wouldn't have cracked under the pressure. The words were so absurd, so viciously unfair, that I couldn't breathe. My mother didn't defend me. She just stared at the floor, tears streaming silently. In that moment, I saw it clearly. They needed a reason, a cause for the uncaused. Grace's perfect world had shattered, and they couldn't blame her. So they would blame the next most logical thing. Me, the imperfect daughter. The complication. I stayed for Grace. I visited her room, held her limp hand, whispered that I was there, that I believed her. She never responded. A week later, Grace was transferred to a private psychiatric facility. The morning they left, I was packing a bag to follow them, to be near the facility. My mother came into my room. Her face was a mask of cold resolution. "You're not coming," she said, her voice devoid of all warmth. "What? Of course I am. She's my sister. Your presence is too disruptive. Your father is right. We need peace now. Grace needs peace. Your energy is too much." She placed a small, hard-sided suitcase on my bed. "It was mine from high school. I've packed some things for you. There's some money in the envelope on top." I stared dumbfounded. Are you kicking me out?" "We need you to leave, Anna. For now. Until things are calmer. Until Grace is better." "Where am I supposed to go?" "Your friend. The one from your art class. Carla. You can stay with her." It was a statement, not a suggestion. She had already arranged my exile. The betrayal was so complete it felt physical. I was being cast out of my family because my sister's tragedy needed a villain, and I had been cast in the role. My father didn't even say goodbye. He was in his study, the door closed. I walked out of the house with that stupid little suitcase, into the drizzling rain. The door shut behind me with a soft, final click. I was 19, heartbroken and homeless. Carla's family, bless them, took me in without hesitation. The next few years were a grind of survival. I dropped out of the local college I'd been attending. I waitressed, I stocked shelves, I walked dogs. I sent letters to Grace at the facility, but they were never answered. I called my home phone a few times, but it was always my father who picked up, and he would hang up the moment he heard my voice. My mother changed her number. It was as if I had been surgically removed from their lives. The pain was a constant, dull ache, a ghost limb of a family. I used that pain. I channeled it into my art, late at night in Carla's garage. Dark, swirling paintings full of anger and loss. Surprisingly, they started to sell at a local co-op. I saved every penny. By 25, I had a modest online following. By 28, I had enough for a down payment on a tiny, sun-bleached cottage on the remote Oregon coast. It was weathered and needed work, but had a view of the raging ocean, and more importantly, it was mine. I built a life there, a quiet life of painting, long walks on the beach, and a carefully cultivated peace. The past was a lockbox I refused to open. Then, one stormy afternoon, a decade after I left with that suitcase, there was a knock on my heavy wooden door. The wind was howling, and I assumed it was a lost tourist. I opened it, and the world tilted. My mother stood there. Evelyn. She looked 20 years older, not 10. Her once impeccable hair was windswept and streaked with more gray than blonde. Her fine clothes were rumpled and damp, and in her hand was a worn leather suitcase. "Anna," she said, her voice barely audible over the gale. "Can I come in?" I was frozen, my hand on the doorframe. 1,000 emotions, rage, sorrow, shock, warred inside me. After a long minute, I stepped back silently. She shuffled in, dripping on the hardwood floor. I made tea, not out of hospitality, but because I needed something to do with my hands. We sat at my small kitchen table, the silence broken only by the whistle of the wind and the crackle of the fire I'd built. "Why are you here?" I finally asked, my voice flat. She wrapped her hands around the mug, not meeting my eyes. "It's your father. He left 6 months ago, packed a bag, and moved to Arizona with a colleague from his old college. He said he couldn't live with the memories anymore." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Which memories?" "The one where he drove his younger daughter away." She flinched. "We made mistakes, Anna. Terrible mistakes." "That's not an explanation. It's a placeholder." She took a shaky breath. "After you left, Grace, she never really came back to us. She finished her treatment, came home, but she was a ghost. She moved to Portland, got a small job, barely speaks to us. She sends a card at Christmas. That's it." Her eyes filled with tears. "Your father blamed himself. And me. And then he just stopped blaming anyone and left. And you?" I asked, ice in my veins. "Where were you supposed to go?" She looked down at her suitcase. "The house is sold. The money? There were debts. Your father. He hadn't been working steadily. I have a little left, but not enough for first and last month's rent anywhere. I have nowhere else to go." Her gaze lifted to mine, filled with desperate, humiliated hope. "I thought maybe I could stay here, just for a little while, until I get on my feet." The audacity was breathtaking. The woman who had exiled me was now seeking sanctuary in the home I'd built because of that exile. The irony was so sharp it could draw blood. "You have got to be kidding me," I whispered. "Anna, please. I'm your mother." "Are you?" The words hung in the air. "My mother disappeared 10 years ago at the doorstep of a hospital. You're a stranger holding her suitcase." She began to cry in earnest, then quiet, broken sobs. "I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. We were wrong. We were grieving and terrified, and we picked the wrong target. We destroyed our family, trying to save a piece of it." I didn't trust her tears. I didn't trust her apology. It felt like a transaction, an apology for a roof. I told her I needed to think and showed her to the small, spare room. I lay awake all night, torn between a decade of hardened resentment and a stupid, stubborn filament of compassion for the shattered woman down the hall. The next morning, I laid out rules. She could stay for 1 month. She would help with chores. She would respect my space and my silence. She would actively look for a job and an apartment. She agreed to everything, her relief palpable. The first week was a tense ballet of avoidance. We moved around each other like planets in a cold solar system. Then, slowly, things began to shift. She didn't rearrange my kitchen. Instead, she asked if she could weed my overgrown garden. I said yes, wary. I came home one evening to find the beds tidy and a simple dinner prepared, a soup from a vegetable she'd found at a local farm stand. It was my favorite from childhood. I ate it in silence, my throat tight. We began to talk in fragments, not about the past, but about the present. She asked about my art. I showed her my studio, the paintings of turbulent seas and hidden faces. She looked at them for a long time and said, "You captured the loneliness. I'm so sorry I put there." One rainy afternoon, she found a box of my old things in the attic, sketchbooks from high school. She brought one down, her fingers tracing a drawing of Grace and me. "I kept all her awards," she said softly, "but I threw out all your drawings. I told myself it was clutter. It was punishment. I was so cruel." It was the first acknowledgement of a specific, petty cruelty. It felt more real than the general "I'm sorry." The third week, I finally asked a question that had haunted me. Did you ever believe me? About someone hurting Grace. She went very still. No, she whispered. Not then. We couldn't face it. It was easier to believe she was sick, that it was internal, to believe it was your influence. Accepting that an external monster had hurt her meant the world was truly unsafe, and we had failed to protect her. She looked at me, her eyes raw. A few years ago, Grace told us it was a boy in her study group. It happened more than once. She tried to make it stop. He threatened her. She carries that guilt, too, for not speaking sooner, for what it did to you. Hearing the truth, confirmed so plainly, was like a bone snapping back into place. It hurt terribly, but the alignment was right. The rage I'd carried for a decade didn't vanish, but it morphed. It was no longer a fire. It was a deep, cold stone of grief for all of us. A few days later, I overheard her on the phone with a friend from her old life. My ears pricked up, expecting to hear resentment. Instead, I heard her say, "No, she's been astonishingly kind, more than I deserve. I'm living in my daughter's grace, literally. It's the purest shame I've ever known and the greatest gift." Something in me softened, irrevocably. The 1-month mark arrived. She had a lead on a small apartment in town and a part-time job at the local library. The night before she was to view it, we sat by the fire. The silence was comfortable now, not charged. "I want you to stay," I said, the word surprising even me. She looked up, shocked. "Anna, you don't have to." "I know I don't," I interrupted. "This is an obligation. This is an offer. You can have the spare room. Pay a small rent when you get the job. We can try to build something new, something honest. It won't be what it was. It can't be, but it could be something real." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she didn't sob. She just let them fall. "I would like that," she said, her voice thick. "More than anything." "There's one condition," I said. "We write to Grace. Together, we tell her the truth, that I never left willingly, that you're both sorry, that there's a room for her here too, if she ever wants it. No pressure, just an open door." My mother nodded, unable to speak. She reached across the space between our chairs and took my hand. Her skin was papery, aged by sorrow and time. I held it. It was not forgiveness. Not yet. Forgiveness felt like a continent away. But it was a ceasefire. It was a foundation, laid on the brutal, hard-won truth. The storm outside had passed. In the quiet that followed, we sat, 2 wounded women in a cottage by the sea, holding on, starting the long, slow work of building a bridge over the terrible canyon of the past. It was fragile, and it might not hold, but for the first time in 10 years, we were both willing to try. The suitcase by the door remained unpacked, but was no longer a symbol of exile. It was just a bag in a home where she was tentatively welcome to stay.